Well, let's keep the conversation going with Darren Gobb. He's a geopolitical strategist, and Peter Doran is the senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Great. So we know that the military warships, fighter jets and so forth, it's been building up in the Middle East in preparation for what could be some type of kinetic interaction with Iran. With that said, President Trump has given indications of what's to come in case Iran doesn't do as he actually advised them to do, come to the table and stop their nuclear proliferation. That is what they never, just to make sure that they never get their hands on a nuclear weapon that can not only threaten Israel, but threaten the entire world. So what do you see as the next steps playing out here? Let's start with you, Darren.
Okay, yeah. I wish I could go back and replay the tapes from when Trump was using similar language and doing similar things in 2017 and 2018 with North Korea. I was still in uniform then, involved in a lot of the things that had to do with that buildup and that threat to try to reduce and pressure North Korea into not developing things or striking America with missiles. This again sounds very familiar. And so that is one thing I would tell you that Trump does, and he does it very well, is if he's going to move things into position to give himself options to exert maximum pressure. He's already displayed the willingness to strike Iran with Midnight Hammer. And so Iran's thinking about that as they look at us, because they're saying, well, they're willing to do this if necessary. And maybe it is best for us to come to the table. On the flip side of that, I don't have much confidence in anything Iran says, even if they do sign off or agree on something with regards to uranium enrichment and other ballistic missile programs. I fully believe that whatever they do, they're going to figure out a way to try to be deceptive to keep those programs going in some way, while maybe showing the international community some of the things they want to see, but hiding what they're really doing in the background, because that's just what Iran is right now.
And that's exactly what President Trump was saying, to your point, Darren, in terms of the fact that after Operation Midnight Hammer, there was an agreement that Tehran would not get or create another nuclear weapon. But here they are again, President Trump saying they're starting their program, restarting it rather. But let's turn to this. Senator Markwayne Mullin, a member of the Armed Services Committee, says one man inside Iran is driving the entire nuclear showdown.
We are not wanting regime change, but the person that's leading this effort is the Ayatollah. Remember in 1979 when he came to power, he was saying that he wanted to be a nuclear Iran, and we have been preventing that from taking place. And when we stopped bombing them, because we could have obliterated them and him during the 12-day war, we chose not to because he said he wasn't going to pursue it. Now that he is pursuing it, the one person that's driving this is the Ayatollah. That one person may have to be removed, but we don't think he's suicidal, but maybe he is.
So here, Peter, the senator, he was erroneously conflating the first Ayatollah to come into power in Iran in 1979 with the current one. However, the point really remains the same. Markwayne Mullin believes that it's the Ayatollah that's adamant on Iran maintaining its nuclear ambitions. So what's your reaction here as to where we end up with this type of individual who is conducting the negotiations?
Well, Senator Mullin wasn't wrong in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
Essentially, it reminds me of Meet the New Boss, same as the old boss.
Same vibe.
What we've seen here with the brutal clerical regime in Iran is that they are adamant. They will not ever give up their nuclear weapons program. That's what they've been communicating. That is a red line for President Trump. He has been assembling, frankly, the greatest military armada the United States has ever gathered since the beginning of Gulf War I. That should give you a sense of just how serious President Trump is. But we mentioned Midnight Hammer. I'm also reminded of President Trump's words over the summer. He said, look, I gave the Iranian regime 60 days to negotiate, and I bombed them on day 61. And so what I think we're seeing today in Geneva is the very last chance for this regime to agree to those three things. One, no nuclear enrichment. You have to give up your program. Two, you can't have the ability to attack your neighbors. And as Secretary Rubio is saying, the United States. And three, we have to see major changes from this regime. You can't kill 30,000 of your own people and get away with it. That's the key point. President Trump drew a line in the sand. He said there will be hell to pay if you kill protesters. The regime has done that. And today is, I think, going to be the make or break point for their future.
Interesting. And you know what? I think America does want regime change there. It's just a matter of how it takes place. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in St. Kitts today, meeting with local leaders. This after a deadly encounter off Cuba's coast, a Florida-registered boat allegedly crossing into restricted waters, ending in gunfire and multiple deaths. Marco Rubio warning leaders that U.S. pressure on Cuba could spark instability in the region. How do you see this playing out, Doran?
Yeah, this is another one that's interesting, disregard to timing. And it doesn't surprise me, of course. This is not unusual. But what's interesting about the timing is the fact that Cuba is under pressure already because of the cutoff of resources from Venezuela that have been turned back to the north rather than into Cuba. And so the fact that this has happened around the time that Cuba is feeling that financial pressure of losing that is curious, to say the least. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily related. We're far too early in this to know, I guess, the established and provable facts of what this boat was, who was on it, and what they were actually doing. I mean, we have names, we have some of the basic facts about it, and what Cuba has told us. And maybe we know more than we're saying right now, too. So I think for now, the best thing to do is let a little bit more of that investigation play out to determine what the actual facts are. But because of what happened and how odd it was, frankly, we may never actually know the why they were there and what they were intending to do in the first place. But my initial reading of the facts that we know now is it doesn't seem like it was there for very good reasons, to say the least.
Yeah, it does seem like a fairly odd scenario, and we're still investigating what actually occurred there. Your reaction, Peter, to the deadly gunfire in Cuba, as well as does the U.S. have the bandwidth right now to handle several of these flashpoints at once?
Secretary Rubio has been very cool, very calm, and very focused on learning more. That's been his reaction, and I think that's the right approach right now. Let's also remember, we cannot trust anything that the government in Havana says at this point. They have a very bad track record when it comes to, say, telling the truth. All told, however, this government is still in big trouble. Set aside this attack on a Florida-registered boat. Cuba's running out of oil, thanks to President Trump's embargo on this island. This is causing massive power outages and serious disruptions to daily life. Some might say that's a bad thing, but at the end of the day, this is going to put the Cuban regime under the necessary pressure that we want to apply in order to effect positive change on the island. Secretary Rubio, I believe, has made this a major milestone for his tenure as Secretary of State. And so that's where the real focus should be, on the oil war. And I think any lies or misinformation coming out of Havana should be taken with a gigantic grain of salt.
You know, Darren, when I look at what's going on in key places around the world, it seems like, you know, with regard to Marco Rubio coalescing the Caribbean countries around Cuba, coalescing countries in Latin America around Venezuela, as well as the same playbook in the Middle East, as well as making sure that we coalesce the NATO allies to actually combat Russia if it actually leads to that point. So people can actually see what's going on and see American leadership around the world. Thank you so much, Darren and Peter. Peter, we appreciate your commentary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.